let's talk about the music. I know that there is also a new album in process, and maybe a little bit later I could ask for any teasers you can offer our audience around what's coming with that. But you have there's such a confluence of different kind of types of I'm going to say approaches woven into your music. I wonder if you could talk to us about, because I imagine as when you're kind of independent artists on your journey and then coming together, maybe you each had different influences and kind of, could you talk to us a little bit about how you've landed on the sound that currently is Twin Flames?
I think that again, the similarities to the name Twin Flames. We grew up all around the same music. I'm older than Chelsey, but our parents were similar in age, and we all listened to the same songs growing up, the classics. And I think over the course of the beginning, obviously our sound was very on the more basic folk sound, and then we started getting musicians in on board, and they had different additions that they gave to the sound. But when they left, there was a hole. So we had to figure out ways to kind of make the sound a lot more expanded. So we just ended up making the songs that were born into something they are now. Even from the releases of those songs, they're slightly different than what they are actually. In anyways, when we play music, what you play on the radio or what you play on your stereo is never quite the same when you play it live, and sometimes it's even better. So that was always our goal. And we want to make as much noise as we can with just the two of us. And, I think it's worked out really well. We really enjoy what we do. And, yeah.
Love that. And I wonder if you could name, like when you talked about classics, right? Because I think like all of us growing up might have a different definition of what classics are. I wonder if you could, animate for us. What are some of the classics that when you talk about classics that, or think about those maybe musicians who really influenced you? Who are those, and what were some of those songs?
Yeah, well, I feel like I was extremely fortunate. Like my parents were almost like music connoisseurs. They just loved music. And my dad had these big teak speakers that would sit in opposite sides of the living room, and being a little girl, these things would tower above me. They were probably about 4 or 5 feet high. And so we had a lot of records in the house, and, Fleetwood Mac was like one of the all-time favorites that played all the time. Carole King, we're talking Paul Simon as well, the Bee Gees, the Beatles. It was just this wide span. I think a lot was 70s folk music. And then we would also, I guess, venture a little bit into the 80s. There was, Carly Simon, and then Whitney Houston, who started coming out later, and then Céline Dion. And, those are obviously a bit more of my influences a little later growing up with a French mother. But
and then the before the times of when Pink Floyd was just soundscaping with all kinds of sounds, and then being a teenager in the 90s, listening to the grunge scene and just having that stripped down to what it would sound like acoustically, and it just meshed into what we now play.
I love that. Again, I as someone who grew up child of the 80s, 90s as well, and also a product of, I'm going to say, a child of Punjabi immigrants. There were things playing in my house that feel like classics to me.